surgery in COVID era is our topic today. And we are in the midst of a big pandemic. Next slide. And you can see this is inside of an aircraft where people are with mask, face shield, gloves and cover. If you had shown me these photos just 6 months ago, I would have presumed they were taken on the sets of a science fiction. Science fiction movie. But today it is a reality. And we are in the midst of a pandemic, which is probably once in lifetime experience we are going through. You will never see a pandemic again. Any one of us here will not be seeing a pandemic again. So let us try to understand this pandemic. You understand? Next slide. And this is the way we are now today. So much of information in the way of symposia, webinars, lectures like this. So much being taught by everybody, and ultimately, to start a clinic, our friend is going through all the details. Similarly, we'll go through all these things. We'll try to get some surgical practice recommendations for surgeons. It is not for minimal access alone, for surgeons during COVID-19 pandemic. Next. Surgery in COVID-19 pandemic, it requires some guidelines. That's what we are trying to do. Why these guidelines? It is for the safety of patients as well as healthcare workers. That is the difference in this pandemic. So far pandemics, the doctors were not that much tested. But this particular pandemic, the safety of healthcare worker has become very important, at most priority. And the last line I am going, what we are presenting today is time sensitive. It is bound to change. Because as evidences mount, we change our ideas. We change our conclusions depending on the data. And current recommendations by expert opinion and knowledge of other pathogens with similar characteristics. One pathogen which comes to our mind is, next, this Spanish flu. This is the lesson of history. The most severe pandemic in history was the Spanish flu of 1918. It lasted for 2 years in 3 waves with 500 million people infected and 50 million deaths. Most of the fatalities happened in the second wave. During the first lockdown, the people felt so bad about the quarantine and social distancing measures that when they were first lifted, the people rejoiced in the streets with abandon. In the coming weeks, the second wave occurred with tens of millions dead. This was the second wave. Now we are in that stage. Now we are liberated with the removal of lockdown. But let us not repeat history in the time of COVID-19. But not we. We have understood. But I don't think public have understood. That is the problem. So these recommendations we try to get not from individuals, from Indian Inter-Society Directives. That is Association of Surgeons of India and affiliated societies. They have given the COVID-19 guidelines, which we are trying to understand. Not only national bodies, international bodies like SAGES, Society of American Gastroenterological Surgeons, and EAES, European Association of Endoscopic Surgeons, they also have given some recommendations for the surgical response to COVID-19. Next. First, let us see the general recommendations. Optimize patient care resources. So that's what the government was doing. We put the lockdown and trying to optimize the hospital setup with beds, with ICU, with medications, with preparation of healthcare workers. That is what optimizing patient care resources. And timely care for urgent and emergency conditions. Elective cases to be postponed, non-operative treatment wherever possible, postpone non-urgent clinic visit itself. If it is not urgent, tell them be at home. Let us see later. And consultations and meetings like this to be virtual, not real. So these are general considerations again. Outpatient department, avoid physical consultation for non-emergency cases. Telemedicine platform you can use maximum. and restrict attendance and proper entry and exit pathway if possible you can maintain. Triage of surgical procedures, naturally you all know that. Emergency, life-threatening, immediately we have to do in spite of all the risks which we are facing, and emergency procedures to go through, semi-emergent procedures and elective procedures. Elective procedures to be avoided, but where the crux is, semi-emergent procedures. For example, we did a head here today. It will look like an elective case, but he said he gets pain on the right side and some hardening in that right inguinal area. That tells you he is getting obstructed. So those things you cannot say elective, you will end up in emergency. So they are the semi-emergent procedures where you have to go. So that's why we are doing these sort of surgeries where they are semi-emergency and people will think they are elective now. So that you have to choose and start doing. Otherwise, they will end up in emergencies and we will be forced to do without any precautions. Now with precautions, we will be able to go. If surgery required, test for COVID-19 in all if possible. All patients to be considered COVID positive until proved otherwise, and consent form should clearly explain about COVID-19, its related implications with pathology and complications. COVID testing, of course, RT-PCR is the gold standard. Single test or repeat testing is a question that I will discuss you in the next slides. And of course, TrueNAT serology not recommended in India at present. Radiology, CT chest, highly sensitive. Recommended when CT abdomen is already being done, do CT chest also, but not recommended as a primary diagnostic modality. RT-PCR is the gold standard. Next slide. Now, there are a lot of discussions on COVID testing, when to do surgery after RT-PCR. Understand? Some of the books give this debatable. I don't say it is the way we should do it, but it is one of the good possibilities which we can try upon. 2 PCRs, 4 to 5 days apart, with the patient in quarantine in hospital, pre-operatively, is what I have zeroed upon. Next slide. Previous slide. Imagine you do a PCR at the time the patient is not infected, and you send the patient back for a day or two till the report comes, in which time he gets infected. You call him after 48 hours, as the PCR report comes negative, you operate and get into trouble. You follow. So instead, 2 PCRs, 4 days apart, with patient in quarantine in the hospital. That is the only foolproof way that I could think. And some of the people follow this quarantining with 2 tests 4 days apart. That is almost foolproof for that patient is concerned. Next slide. So now, having gone through these things, you have got 2 types of patients now, COVID positive and COVID negative. COVID negative patients, if you are sure, just we can go ahead with as in the routine way. But in COVID positive only, a lot of directions are needed, especially operating room directions are donning or doffing designated area with washing. And the operating room, preferably negative pressure room, and windows AC are desirable, should be adequately ventilated, minimum 12 air changes per hour or at least 160 liters per second per patient in facilities with natural ventilation. This is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare guidelines. Minimum personnel in operation room, no stepping out of the operating room, minimum 1 hour time gap between 2 procedures, minimize duration of surgery, and no training at this time of COVID. Next. These are the donning and doffing this thing sequence. First hand wash, then put your cap, shoe cover, hand rub again, and inner glove, cover with gown, mask, surgical or N95, goggles, hood and outer gloves. Before donning, remove all external wearing such as watches, jewelry, earrings, bangles, pen, ID card, etc. Then you have to do what is known as doffing. First outer glove, then hood, then gown, shoe cover, gloved hand, goggles, mask, surgical mask, then cap, inner glove and hand wash. Mask should be removed only outside patient room. Till you see the patient, it should be on. Next slide. Centralized air conditioning, they say it has to be avoided in the COVID time. Window AC is desirable. Minimum 12 air changes per hour that I told you already, and this 160 liters per second per patient. But where from it came, that is the point. Understand? When our government of India changed railway compartments as beds, and when we wanted to start our trains again, the AC compartments, how it has to be, they try to do a research. That's right. In a statement, Railway Board Chairman Vinod Kumar Yadav said, we did a lot of research and our medical team has suggested we change the air 12 times an hour, but we decided to enhance it to 15 to 16 times for almost safety. The air will go out and the new air will come in, so it will get diluted if organisms are there. Next. And inside the ward, minimum personnel should be there. Nobody should step out on and off. Minimum 1 hour time gap between procedures. Minimize duration of surgery. Again, as I told you, there is no training programs during this. Now, during surgery, what are the things you should do? As you go to the procedure, let us see. Operation trolley should be prepared and kept covered. Only then the patient should be brought inside the theatre. Sufficient quantities of all types of sutures, drugs, etc. and any other operative requirement should be there within the OT, because you have left out one thing, you have left out other things, you want to go out and get it, all these things to be avoided. Once you have gone in, nobody should come out of the theatre. During intubation, minimum personnel should be there in the OT. Surgical team should wait outside till intubation has been done. During surgery, the electrocautery should be used at the lowest power setting. We will see why. Charring of tissues should be avoided to reduce the creation of smoke, because it is well documented that the viruses are carried through smoke. That's why we had initially itself one topic on plume, smoke and how to suck it out. Understand? That is more important during COVID. Only the anesthesia team should remain in the OT during extubation. Remaining members should exit the OT but not remove their PPEs in case their assistance for some complication is required. And proper removal of the PPE and its safe disposal should be done. Here I would like to mention about what is known as aerosols. These aerosols is the problem unique to COVID era. The aerosolization of the virus is a big problem in our COVID era. Professor Alistair Hart, a reputed vascular surgeon, he has come up with a landmark paper about to be published in Lancet that operation theatres are COVID-19 wind tunnels, where the viruses are being percolated inside the theatre through our air conditioning system, and also in a typical orthosurgery there will be use of drills, burr, hammer, etc., which can splash virus containing aerosols onto the ceiling and to other metal and plastic surfaces. Here you will remember, in Italy, the initial deaths were more with orthopedic surgeries. In India also, the first doctor to die was an orthopedician. And recently, 2 ENT surgeons were reported to be dead after the surgeries, because they used to burst and they try to splash the aerosols. Next. Since it is proven that the virus can stay active for 72 hours in plastic and metal surfaces, thorough disinfection should be carried out. Or surgery should be planned in 3-day intervals. You should have more number of theatres. In the intervals, you should try to do that. HEPA filter or ventilation system can be hotbeds to transmit high amount of viral load. Proper disinfection routine should be followed for the same. The viral load here is many times more than when you touch a fomite like a lift button. Understand? Even that we want to avoid. But here it is much more than that. Next. Another interesting recent study is a single minute of speaking like this can generate between 1000 to 100,000 virion containing aerosols. These infectious aerosols can accumulate in indoor and in circulating air for hours and can cause spread. That's why even in the open area, the mask is very important and we should minimize our talking. We are doing it in theatre, even outside, the talking should be less because it produces this amount of aerosols. Yes. So, where are the areas where aerosols are produced and where we should be careful? I told you speech, one of the definite area where aerosol is produced, where common people also should be aware of. And actually in one of my YouTubes I have talked about it, how speech generates aerosols and how it infects our own friends, our own colleagues. So next is surgery involving drills, burr and hammer. I told you about orthopedic surgery, I told you about ENT surgery, where these things are used, results in aerosols. Electrocautery and harmonic scalpel. Harmonic scalpel to be avoided, number one. Electrocautery with a low setting. That is, it should not produce more. That amount of setting you should try to have. These are all in COVID positive patients I am talking about. Remember that. And laparoscopic surgery actually initially thought it was harmless, but the CO2 and the release of CO2 results in aerosols because there are good number of papers which have told these viruses have been cultured in, have been seen in petroleum fluids. So when you release CO2 with pressure, it will produce aerosol dispensation. Next. So now I will just try to review what all we have done. As I told you, this is SAGES and European Association of Endoscopic Surgeons recommendations, surgical personal protection. Minimum number of theatre staff, all staff wear PPE. Service rationalization. Postpone all elective cases, minimize face-to-face consultation and have only virtual meetings. And this postpone all elective cases, I already talked about semi-emergency cases which we should not miss. And practical measures, consent covers risk of COVID-19. All patients tested prior to surgery, dedicated OR for COVID-19 alone, and endoscopy, all staff wear PPE, avoid advanced procedures. Coming to laparoscopy. Little evidence of minimal invasive surgery is specific to COVID-19 earlier, but not now. That's why I told you it is time bound. As the time goes, as the evidence mounts, we try to change our recommendations. So in that way, laparoscopy has got aerosol effect because of CO2 and release of the CO2 at the end of the surgery. Proven benefits of reduced length of stay and fewer complications, that is a clear. And this is a filter which is used when there is release of CO2 that will try to filter the virus, which is if it is used. And minimize use of energy device, I told you already why. Next. So specific to laparoscopic surgery, what are the things to be done? You should keep the pressure the lowest possible. Instead of 15, try to bring it to 12 or 10 or 8 whenever possible. Port should be snugly filled. There should not be leak around the ports. That should be avoided. There are materials which are coming to seal around the trocar, which will help us to prevent leakage of the gas. All pneumoperitoneum should be safely evacuated from the port attached to the filtration device. I showed you the filtration device. Before closure, before trocar removal, specimen extraction or conversion to open. Once placed, port should not be used to evacuate smoke or desufflation during the procedure where possible. There, you should have a dedicated port to suck the smoke. You should not use every trocar to release the gas. Only dedicated port should suck and get it into water with the hypochlorite solution. During desufflation, all escaping CO2 gas and smoke should be captured with an ultrafiltration system if available. That is ultra low particle arrestor or high efficiency particle arrestor. If they are available, you can attach it. But still validation is awaited. Alternatively, sponge soaked in hypochlorite solution or sprayed around the exit port. If you apply, then the leak, it will be having minimal damage. Next. The least dependent port should be utilized for desufflation. The desufflation, you should try to use the least dependent. And the specimens removed after all CO2 gas and smoke is evaporated. Surgical trains only if absolutely necessary, you should try to do. In spite of all this knowledge, all these discussions, all these inter-society recommendations, national and international, still, this is the situation on June 3. At least, this is in Maharashtra. This state is Maharashtra. 500 doctors infected at that time, over 140 in Mumbai alone. Though this is the situation, where our healthcare workers stand is this litigation news. Health Ministry tells the Supreme Court that final responsibility is on healthcare workers like us to train themselves and be safe from COVID-19. So we have to be, having a lot of information about this disease, and we should protect ourselves. We cannot be ignorant of this. That is what Supreme Court as well as Government of India says. So we should be updating ourselves with the knowledge of this disease and the procedures to be done as and when the newer findings, new data come. Next. Health workers apply for doctors because we are committed. We are committed to this profession. So as healthcare workers, we cannot deny any of the instructions from the government or from administration or from our own conscience. So we have to face this, but protect yourself with a lot of knowledge. Don't be ignorant. Next. This is the lessons from the deaths. One of Susi Kassi, one of the Egyptian American wife, his quote could not be more relevant because among all risk factors, ignorance appears to be the most dangerous as well as the most remediable. It is most dangerous, but it is remediable. From the viewpoint of a healthcare worker means not only doctors, all the people who are with us, COVID-19. No one is an exception, regardless of their designation. Maybe a professor, maybe a JR, education, maybe a very high degree, maybe we are a BBS, or either an American or an African. Everybody is same as far as this disease is concerned. So let us not be ignorant about it. Ignorance is the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. And lot of checklists to eliminate errors we should have. Pre-procedural briefings like this you should have. Post-procedural debriefing, team-based simulations and trainings are helpful in intensive care settings as well as in the OT settings. Next. So, life wants you to win. Please get out of your own way. What I say is, life wants us to win. Please get out of our own way. Let us find out our own ways and means to protect ourselves, to protect patients. The safety of healthcare worker is important. The safety of patient is still more important. So their safety in more safety. Thank you.